All right. Well, first of all, it's just really a delight to be here, everyone, and nice to meet you. I haven't facilitated one of these master classes in a while, so I'm super delighted to do it. This is one of my favorite topics. For those of you who don't know me, my name is So-Young, and I'm the Chief Energizer of Gnowbe. And I'm here joined by my awesome colleague, Jit, who is camera off, a bit shy maybe today. But he is a product expert and really an expert at microlearning instructional design. And he's also one of our experts on gamification and the application of gamification to learning. So if you have not had the chance to meet him, I hope that you do, because he's actually quite brilliant. And then my colleague, Nicola, who's our head of microlearning, is in the other Zoom room. So she will be joining us as she's now playing Traffic Cop. And then she'll join us here in a few minutes. So today is going to be a really quick overview of a topic called, game on gamification. And we hope to debunk some of the myths out there, and many, I would say hundreds of hours of conversation on this topic, and things that we constantly hear about the misconceptions of gamification, especially as it relates to training and learning. And hopefully each of you will walk away with some really tangible, practical things, because we all know that learning is about doing. It's not just about knowing. So we hope that you will go beyond just learning things here from me and hopefully from each other. That's the whole power of adult learning, is to be able to learn from one another. And we have a lot of amazing, inspiring experts on this call. And then to be able to apply. And so at Gnowbe, we always talk about know, think, apply, and share. So for those of you who've been with us on our journey, we're going to take you on that journey, as an experience today as well. And just as a context, Gnowbe is it's a living platform. What do I mean by that? Is that there are X number of people here on this masterclass today. This is a living masterclass. So some of your colleagues couldn't make it today for whatever reason. So you can share the link with them, and they can participate in this masterclass a year from now, 2 years from now. And similarly, you can participate in prior masterclasses we have by going through the program and participating, contributing to the polls, reflection questions, and activities, as well as get a copy of the Zoom video. But I don't know about you, but I'm not someone who likes to go through 1 hour Zoom videos in the past. I would rather participate in the content, right? And so you're able to participate in past masterclasses, and it's called living, because your contribution will continue to shape the outcomes of that program, and you'd be able to share in the group board and continue to learn from each other even after today. So we do encourage you to connect, make connections. That's why we have a sharing board as well. So without further ado, I'm just going to go ahead and just get right into it. And I'm really excited because I think some of you have shared. Good. So as you all know, Gnowbe is, going to be our digital guide and companion for this conversation. So you're welcome to join along in your mobile phones along with me on the Zoom call, or if you prefer a web experience, you can also have Zoom open and then your web.gnowbe and then go through that as well, because this will be very experiential. So I'm just going to jump right in. And you can find out about me here and other things, but I want to just go to reflections about what you hope to cover during this conversation. So I'm going to just go to the group board here. So thank you all for sharing, because I think that's really helpful about what you hope to get out of today. So I think we have some introductions here. I guess no one shared. I think people were shy to share about what they hope to get out of it. Any questions maybe from the group or in the group chat? What do you hope to get out of today's session today? And what do you hope will be covered? What we will be covering is how to apply gamification principles in a non-gamified, especially like non-gamified content. I see many people on this call are doing things like, could be compliance or risk or law, or it could be onboarding, and usually onboarding is not so gamified, or product training, etc. So how do we do that? We're going to be covering the principles of behavior design and how it can be used to change mindsets and behaviors. Ultimately, the purpose of training and learning is not to deliver information. And I'll say that again. The purpose of training is not to deliver information. The purpose of training is for people, our audience, our participants, to take what we are sharing and do something with that information, obviously to perform better, to be more productive, to build more confidence, etc. So even this masterclass, my objective is not for you to passively listen to what I'm saying, right? Because you could just watch a video, but to participate so that you can take actions to improve the way that you train, so that then you would then have better engagement and outcomes with your participants and learners, right? So that's the whole idea. And so we're going to also talk about how do you design interventions such as nudging and messaging and sequencing to change influence. And also, how do we understand kind of this whole idea of gamification principles around human motivation? So that's going to be a big part of what we cover in our conversation today. So let's see in the chat group. Yeah. Thank you so much. I think Michael is sharing. He wants to share, learn how to apply it in training and facilitation. Absolutely. Open mind, email captured. Okay, thanks, Debs. Deb, hopefully this is that's a good subject line. What is Gnowbe? How do we implement it? We'll talk a little bit about that at the end. Simplify curious for speaking coaching. Okay, awesome. And we will definitely go through some of those topics, not all of them. So if there are things that we don't get to cover because it's a short time, then we will try to cover that after. So I'm going to go to the images that people shared, and I'm going to call on some volunteers here. So let's look at this game. Marta, why did you choose this game?
Hi, Marta. Yeah, I haven't brought down my comment why I choose this game. Just sorry about that. But
That's okay.
yeah, the energy and trying to listen to my friends' voice, and the competition as well.
Okay, excellent, excellent. So let's look at some other shares, right? Oh, I love this one. This is like one of my favorite games when I was a kid, Nick. So why did you choose Battleship?
Hi, Nick here. I think I put in my comments a little bit. It's organic. It doesn't have the ship positions can change. There are a lot of strategies. It's not that you play it once and you know how to do it. I mean, you can win it all the time because there's a level of strategy there, and so I think it's exciting.
Yeah, so you're talking now about there's a dynamic, it's changing, it's not the same.
Yeah.
Right.
Yeah.
Right. So Nick is talking about this, and Marta's talking about energy, right? And kind of this movement and this ability for change. Thank you guys for that. And for those who haven't done it, no problem. This is living, so you can go ahead and go back and add your images later. So as we talk about it, and I wanted you to and take a moment to go through the images, and why we picked those, right? And so what makes some games great? And so if we talk about some of the games, right? There are obviously Candy Crush. I mean, Minecraft is huge, right? We take children right now who are like obsessed and will spend hours and hours and hours a day on some of these games. We have literally people who don't leave their rooms because they get so addicted to these games. So what is it about these games that make it so addictive, almost to the point, almost to, the detriment of health, right? And so when you start to break down some of those gaming elements, you see things like rewards, graphics, the way the user interface is, open-ended, right? We talked about Battlecraft being that there's different variations of that. There's fast-paced, there's energy, like Marta said, and there's social interaction. And then also, if you take some of these other ways, there's going to be team-based gameplay, variety of difficult levels, right? So there's different elements as you start to break down games. So we can take the principles of those games and then start to apply them, even as we think about training. And if you think about some games that, of what we perceive as boring, right? Why are some things, you could design a game. You could design something, but it's considered boring. What are some reasons why something could be boring, right? It could be the opposite of what I just said, where it's too clinical, you don't have choices, you're confused, you don't know how to make decisions, it's very simplistic, maybe it's always the same every single time, there's no element of kind of dynamism, there's a predetermined path maybe, or maybe there are no outcomes. And outcomes, we're going to talk about are very important parts of some of those things. So just let's take a moment. In your opinion, what makes a game great and what makes a game not so great. So just take a moment here to write it down in your personal experience, right? Take a moment. Okay, and then let's see what the rest of you have to say. And as you, for those of you who are first-time participants of a Gnowbe Masterclass, you'll realize we are very participatory. This is not a passive webinar where you're just going to listen to someone talk at you for an hour, but we invite you all to participate. All of you have great experiences, and we'd love for you to share them as well. All right. Reagan, thank you. It's the ability to keep players engaged the whole time. And that, right, and so even if you think about, and I'd like you to, we're gonna be a participant in this game called the Masterclass, and then sometimes I'm gonna move you into the balcony so that you can see what's happening in even the dynamics of this Masterclass, right? So I'm having a sense of competition, but I'm also trying to keep everyone engaged, even in participating, so that all of you are playing this game called the Masterclass, right? And so those are different things. So definitely we're applying it as we're learning it at the same time. Character development, winning is too difficult, right? Sometimes, and that's from a learning perspective, if you think about when winning is too difficult or achievement is too difficult or too easy, it sometimes takes a challenge away. So when we think about assessments, we can apply some of those same criteria even to assessments and outcomes. Absolutely. Thank you. Fantastic contributions. And so we want to do a little bit of myth busting. So this is very common. I hear this, I literally maybe a few times a week. Oh, so you guys do gamification. So do you have like games, you know, like word puzzles or like word hunts or match the dots and all that stuff? So while games can be used for learning for sure, gamification per se does not equal games. And gamification is much more than adding points, coins, and badges. Points, and badges can be used as motivators, which we'll talk about in a second, but gamification is much more than that. And it's not the same as game-based learning. The other thing we often hear is, oh, gamification, you know, oh, we do adult learning. We do serious learning. So because we are serious and we have serious topics, you know, we're doing compliance. These are serious. We should not be using gamification in serious topics like safety. I would say it should be the opposite, right? And gamification is just one size fits all. Our company, our context is very unique. Gamification might work for other adults, but not for our employees. I'm laughing because I think some of, you know, we probably have heard this even in our organizations. And gamification, we don't have the money for it. It's too expensive. We don't have the know-how. It's very complex and we can't implement it. Right? And oh, our people are not really like that. So I think I wanted to debunk some of those myths. So obviously all of those things are myths. The reality is gamification as a set of principles, it's a way of understanding human motivation, both intrinsic and extrinsic, and applying game-like elements into non-gamed contexts. So it's not about just superficial rewards or making learning trivial. So honestly, like a word puzzle, I don't know how that makes learning deeper. It may help me to spell better, right? For example, and there's nothing wrong. In fact, we have a word puzzle because people ask for it, because sometimes you just want something silly, right? But I think we shouldn't confuse fun and having a word puzzle that helps you with words to retain information with a deepening of a learning experience, right? So we should just call that what it is. It's just fun. You added in a little bit of fun and games to the learning experience, which is totally fine, right? I mean, I have run workshops where we have Lego blocks and all kinds of stuff, right? But we're using them to further and deepen learning experiences. So you can use games. So you want to be very thoughtful that games don't equal gamification. And for those of you who are familiar, I never heard of Octalysis, the Yukai Chao. He's one of the foremost experts on gamification. He's a good friend of mine. And years ago, when I started Gnowbe, we had lunch in Palo Alto. And he had, I think, just published his gamification book. I don't remember. Or anyway, we were talking. And I said, yeah, we did a lot of user research on gamification theory. And, this guy's an expert, right? So he's like, oh, like, what did you do? And I said, oh, well, we understood human motivation and looked at, intrinsic and extrinsic motivation. So we designed different features to help. And he was like, what? He's like, people normally don't understand gamification. Usually they do it in a very superficial way. So he has been a guest speaker at our talks before. He's done even, and so a lot of his book, if you read his book, you'll see that there's a lot of resonance to everything that we're talking about today. And his name is Yukai Chow. We can put it in the group chat later and a link to his book as well, Octalysis. So if you look at the actual research, especially when it comes to learning and training, does gamification work for most adults from an adult perspective and from a human perspective, not just for the fun, hip Gen Z people, but even maybe older people or people who, these are all myths that I've heard, right? Oh, older people don't like it or for serious topics. So let's just look at the actual data. In terms of retention and completion rates, there are 50% increase in learner engagement. And sometimes it's even higher, 20% increase in training, 14% higher skills, higher retention rates, higher motivation, right? So, I mean, the data and the stats, I mean, are overwhelming that gamification and the application of principles to a learning and training environment is very, very important. And if you think some case studies, right? I think, how many of you use Duolingo or have tried it? Yeah, I've tried it a little bit, right? And we talked about some of the elements of games that we like, which was the color, the image, right? The achievement, the level, the leveling up all the time. It's also very bite-sized. So you're able to kind of feel that sense of accomplishment, when you use Duolingo to learn, right? And so it's this leveling up concept. So they do a very good job with points and streaks, etc. And you're able to kind of get daily practice. So there are many examples of how now people are applying gamification into that context. So I'm just curious from, the experts and the practitioners here on this call, what have you tried in terms of gamification? And let's take a moment just to look at the different techniques you've tried. And maybe if you're brave enough, you can share what have you tried and maybe it didn't work. And sometimes you get the best learning, but things that you've tried that have not worked. All right. So, okay. Anyone want to share an example of something you've tried before? Has anyone tried anything? I can share one while some of you are thinking. We use Gnowbe for our all hands meetings. So every month we have a global meeting and it's all hands. And so I wanted to make sure that everyone would go through all the Gnowbe all hands program content. So I put in a little pop-up reward that if you got to this certain session and certain action, it was a free day off, but it was a pop-up that came up and it only came up once. So if you missed it, too bad. And it was an element of surprise. And so the gamification principle I applied was element of surprise, wonder. It's a one-time only, so you miss it. If it's like the Pokemon or the Pikachu who comes out. If you miss Pikachu, too bad. So you have to catch it. And then some people got a free day off. And so then obviously people talked about it and they were like, what? You got a free day off or whatever? And they said, yeah, it was in the Gnowbe program. And so that was just a very fun example of using gamification strategies to drive greater engagement. So of course, after that, if you put things like that inside a program, you can imagine what happens the next time, right? Yeah. All right. Okay, so a lot of you have not tried that. That's totally fine. And that's probably why you're here. And so in terms of intrinsic motivations, a lot of the things that I just talked about, even the example I just gave about the motivation. So having a day off is an extrinsic motivation, right? I want a day off. And so if I want a financial reward, I want a day off, I want something tangible, then that could be a motivation then for the next time to then go into the program and check things out because I put some reward in there. And so you can definitely use both intrinsic and external motivation. So that's why badges or digital certificates of accomplishment are all external, extrinsic motivations, because then but they could be driven by internal things. It could be, I want to feel a sense of accomplishment. I want to feel a sense of purpose. I want choice. And so there are many different kinds of intrinsic motivations when we think about learners. We did a piece of research when we started the company and about motivations of learning. Now, how many people, just a quick show of hands here, believe that people take your training and they learn from you because they're just like motivated to learn? How many of you think that they're genuinely just motivated because they're so curious and hungry to know your topic that they learn? One, okay, that's great. Two, three, okay, awesome, awesome. So what we found, so a few of you. So what we found is that the minority of learners have the intrinsic curiosity and motivation to learn. Now, isn't that interesting? Now, if we were to design, if I were to design my training with the assumption that everyone in my group or my class or workshop wants to learn, then I may not have the right starting assumption about intrinsic motivation. You have other people who join, and this is the research that we did on motivation, was achievement. Some people were really motivated to achieve. So they learned so that they could achieve something, so that they could achieve a promotion, recognition, a digital certificate, another spike, another check mark next to their box, right? Achievement. There were another group of learners who were highly motivated by competition. It didn't even really matter what it was. They just wanted to win. So if a team was learning something together, they needed to be the first one to complete because they wanted to be higher on the leaderboard and show that they're faster, better than their colleague. Then we had these very interesting humans. They didn't complete their programs, but in the group board, they were like the most social. They would share links, they would share articles, they would share, oh, you know what, last time I learned this, and share a bit of information. So they're called the friends. So they were highly motivated to learn something so they could share with other people. So they're the friend. Then we had the the responsible learners. And we found a lot of these. So the responsible learners were like, I don't really want to do this, but I have to because my boss told me to, and I will do it because I've been told I need to do it. So that's the responsible learner. Then you have people who are the learners, right? Who are actually motivated, pure curiosity. They're just hungry to learn. They're like, they see after class and they're like, ask 20 questions, you know? So you have those. And then you have the sixth persona we found, which is actually my persona, which is the selective learner. So for me, I'm motivated by variety, and I just need to know what I want. I will never complete anything. I have a stack of books this high. And since I was young, I would like flip through and I might read chapter 4 and 7. And people think that's really weird, but yeah, maybe I'm a bit weird. But my persona type is I'm motivated by a specific topic that I'm curious about, and I will go find that information. And once I get what I need, then I'm done. I move on to the next thing. And I like to connect things. So that's my motivation. So I need choice and variety, and I need options when I'm learning. So if you make me learn in a linear fashion in the same way, then you're going to lose me. Yeah, so I need a motivation and choice. And so these are different kinds of motivations when we think about that. So as we think about the type of ways that you're now motivating your learners, understanding that you probably have a mix, and all of us in this room are probably a mix of different motivations as well. How might we rethink and reimagine the way that we train, understanding those motivations? right? So here are some examples, right, would be things like you might have a leaderboard because that appeals to the competitors, the competitive learners. But honestly, for people like me, I don't care, right? I'm a selective, like, I'm like, whatever, good for you, you won, awesome, right? So it's not about trying to design one method for everyone, but have a variety of methods so that you get most people. Does that make sense? So you're not trying to take one technique, because not one technique will work for all of us, but have like a toolkit of techniques. And the more toolkit in your techniques you can use, you can probably appeal to more things. So there'll be something for everyone. And so and just as an example, just because we're in Gnowbe, the reason why we added the group share board and all this, and we encourage sharing, it's not going to appeal to everyone, we know. And even if you look at our group board, but it will appeal to the people, the friends who are motivated by sharing. And so that kind of hooks them because they kind of come back and they want to help other people. We have a weekly leaderboard that comes out every Friday board because that motivates the competitive. We have this little checkbox of achievement. So for all of you achievers in the group, if you want to know how you're doing, you just go here to your progress bar. You'll see exactly how much and we've created, this is how much you've achieved. I'm at 36% completion rate in this program, right? And those are for the achievers. So we designed different ways of even a product in order to understand that. So you can think about that from a training context as well, how you might do that. And for you competitive learners in the group, since I'm sure there are some, I'm going to go to the members. So let's see who's at the top of our leaderboard right now. Let me see. Santi is at 82%. Congratulations, well done. And Marta is very close, and Chloe, so it's a close race, but that's okay. We give all of you a chance to catch up. So these would be for your achievers or your competitive learners, right? Or it could be just pure curiosity that drives them to the top, yeah? And so we're going to talk about these 4 principles of gamification, as we talk about the motivations. And these are just to synthesize what I'm talking about, because it's really hard to remember 20 million things, right? Our brains can only process a few things. 3 is usually better, but bear with me, we're going to do 4. So these are the 4 C's. And the 4 C's are based on intrinsic and extrinsic motivation to help us as we design. So the first principle is context. Now, a lot of amazing games start with a context or a narrative. It tells you, oh, you enter this gate and then you enter into this house and there's 3 choices to take and 3 doors. Which door do you go in, right? But it's really about why should they be playing the game? So why should they be taking part in your program? Why should they be learning it? Assuming that not every person is like, oh my gosh, I'm so dying to learn safety principles. I'm so excited. I couldn't sleep all night because I wanted to learn about safety principles, right? Or I really wanted to learn about that product description, right? Why should they learn? So what is the context and the motivation of why they should? Because you want to tap into a deeper purpose of why they're there. And the second principle is curiosity. Now, curiosity is this this is humanagogical. So I talk about andragogy, which is the science of how adults learn. Pedagogy is the science of how children learn. Humanagogy is actually something that's universal. So curiosity is humanagogical, which means all humans love curiosity. So that element of that Pikachu, that little surprise element that I popped up, that was an example of curiosity. And sometimes when you see something flashing, like notifications, why phones drive us cuckoo? Because we're so curious. We want to know who messaged us or what was that notification. So that curiosity then will often drive us to then click on that button, sometimes to our detriments, right? So the curiosity is this element of this desire to know more and to investigate something. And so you can do that in learning in many different ways by having an open-ended question, not giving the answer, right? Holding that back. And so there's different ways that we can start to apply that. Challenge. We talked about this in game principles. Challenges is where you want to help them to overcome something. So you give them a challenge. That could come in scenario planning, where you give them an easy scenario to give them a sense of accomplishment. Then you give them a tough one It could be through assessments, both quantitative and qualitative. It could be peer-based reviews. And there's many different ways. Or you can even say, for example, this is a complex technical machine that you're fixing. Why don't you try that and upload a video of you doing that to give a sense of accomplishment that I did it and I got it and I overcame that challenge. Or share a comparison pre and post. Session 1, have them try it, then have them do the same action again at the end of the session, right? And then say, look at how much you've now achieved and now you've been able to overcome greater challenges. So that starts to then get into the intrinsic motivation of accomplishment, of achievement, competition, if they're competitive, pride, right? Pride of work, curiosity. So you're tapping into different motivations as you start to think about challenge. And there are many ways of thinking about challenge. And then consequence. So one of the key principles is once I get that level, I achieve that thing, I capture the treasure, I capture the monster, right? I either get some kind of consequence and reward. That could be like a high five, great job. That could be a punishment if I get it wrong. It could be a certificate if it's learning, right? It could be extra. This could be monetary, or it could be very qualitative and very kind of motivation based. And so I know for many facilitators and trainers, when you're in a class and you're like, great job. So, when I said to Santi, great job, she's at the top of the leaderboard, right? That was an element of reward and recognition that she was at the top of the leaderboard, right? Or Marta for trying, being the first one, great job, thank you for sharing. So that consequence is then to reward behavior that you're trying to solicit. So even in training, great trainers do this all the time. And we don't think of it as training sometimes, but it actually can be embedded into a training and learning experience and be very intentional of how you design these principles into your training programs. And they could be digital or non-digital. So these principles are not about, and even in your speaking, right? I think, Kevin, you were asking about in your speaking as well. So these are things that can happen in live, synchronous, asynchronous context, right? Because you can apply them different ways. So I'm going to I've been talking a lot, and I like to hear what you guys think. So I'd like to now take an opportunity to share this principle of context. And I talked a little bit about that, but can you think of an example in your context now? Now, this is the know, think, apply, share. So I want to go into the apply. So think of an application or an example of how you have developed or how you would develop context in a training that or speaking or facilitation that you're going to run. I'll give everyone a minute to think. Yeah. So I just shared my one example that we are applying here is we share in advance in the pre-session 1, asking everyone, why are you here? What do you hope to get out of it? What are the objectives that you hope to accomplish? So that's a way of setting context. What is this conversation going to be about? Yeah. Any others? Chit, you want to share? So we can hear from you. I know we can read your comment, but
yeah, so I think the principle of sharing a context, the whole idea is to share the why, right? The relevance to our learners, and that draws them in. So for me, I think like a technique I like to use would be to use storytelling. Yeah, because I think very universally stories draw people in, right? So instead of describing the why, share with them a story, share with them analogies. Let's say if it's like an e-learning content or speech, or just listening to someone, stories always hook people in. Yeah. So for me, that story, using stories, we use it as a hook for attention. And then once they are invested in it, that's where they start to be more open to the idea of the why and the relevance.
Absolutely. I think that's a really big one. Anyone else want to share?
Is my mic on?
Yes,
Yeah.
it is.
Okay,
Yeah.
good. Yeah, I mean, I do at the very beginning of one of my courses, I do something for the people to introduce themselves. And so I invite them to choose cards, a variety of different cards, and I ask them a question, a couple of questions, and they are then to look at their cards and then to share with us who they are from these cards.
I love that.
And it's a very different, I mean, it feels different because people come not as their position. That's not it. I want them to find out a little bit more about each other.
Yeah, I love it. And that humanizes the whole interaction that you're going to have then for the rest of your session, right? I love that.
In fact, later on in the session, I invite them to, go back to the cards and see which actually is relevant now or not, and pick another one which is more relevant.
Oh, I love that. That's fantastic. Yeah.
So it's a growth at the same time throughout the whole session from beginning to end.
So you're seeing kind of a shift as well.
Yeah.
Yeah. So there is that movement that you're talking about. And so we've been talking about even in games, right? That engagement and that movement. That's a fantastic example. Thanks, Kevin. Yeah, so I think we're going to move now to the next principle of curiosity. And I'm going to ask you to do the same as well. To think about curiosity, we're in session 2, right? In action 9. And curiosity can come in so many different ways. These are just some examples, right? Around games, it could be true false questions. It's you can use it for knowledge gaps, etc. So just think of an application or an opportunity where you are using and how you're applying curiosity in your training. And let's please share. Thank you so much for sharing. You were the first. So can you tell us why you share random pictures?
Yeah, just to portray very everyday stuff, but taken from different angles that it just opens up the mind to be open to be looking at different perspectives. Yeah, so it could be just very, very simple stuff, like it could even be your genes, but then when you zoom in, you get to see all the fine threads that you've never seen before and then share. So what's this? Where is this? Yeah.
Okay. And why are you doing that?
To kind of tell people, don't be stuck in a certain perspective. Yeah, be curious to open your eyes and ask yourself, yeah, maybe I'm just forcing myself to see what I want to see, but yeah, it kind of opens up that perspectives.
And so I'm curious, what is the topic that you're training on?
Oh, it could be many things.
Okay.
Yeah,
So
could be anything.
really,
Yeah, the application. Yeah.
So it's really about opening their mind. And so you're
Yeah.
using something that's to spark curiosity, to just open their mind, even to the whole learning experience.
Yeah.
Yeah, brilliant. Love that example. I think one other share. I love the sharing because that's where I learn a lot as well. One other volunteer on curiosity. There's so many different ways you can spark curiosity in training. Yeah. Okay, go ahead, Kevin.
Yeah, I'm very much in tune with the understanding of nature and how nature is a mentor and a teacher for us. And so I invite people to explore through a variety of and getting curious about what is nature, what are the different elements of nature, how they're interconnected, how you see diversity in design, to get and I do this live as well with forest bathing, so helping people to understand how they are interconnected and to be able to sense not only their insights and intrinsic, but also to see how it can be applied in an organizational point of view.
Absolutely. And I think that's where using objects, nature, even people in the room, right, to spark curiosity and to just have people think differently. I liked Marta's as well, because Marta's talking about curiosity, even the context of just understanding your content, right? The pre-assessment of people are often curious to know their results. They want to know their assessment. So there's curiosity even embedded in a test. I want to know how many times do you take all these online tests, personality tests, right? Because you're just curious. And so even the idea of using assessments to spark curiosity, I think is actually fantastic as well. So we're going to jump now to the third principle, which is challenge. Now in challenge is really about, it can be anything. It could be thought-provoking, super difficult questions. I think some of my questions to you all have been challenging because some of you had to pause and say, oh, I don't know, right? So even my questions to some of you have been challenging. It could be puzzles, it could be mazes, it could be appropriate challenges, scenarios, right? Timed assessments, the element of like limitations under pressure when you have time pressure also creates levels of difficulty. So what's an example that you can think of that you have tried, or maybe for those of you who haven't tried it, no problem. What do you want to try? To think, what's an idea that you have to put in some challenge into your training? And I'm pretty sure most of you already do this in ways that you may not even be aware of already. Challenge, all right. Do we have any challenge, people?
In terms of challenges, we normally embed quizzes just to reinforce the learning, and then at times some different type of interactive activities for the learners to try and connect in terms of their learnings and the quizzes that we presented.
Yeah, and maybe just for context, what do you train on typically?
We sometimes do volunteer training, and then based on that information provided, but then we also provide quizzes and also opportunities for the volunteers to pose any queries and etc.
Yeah, thank you. Thanks. Sorry for arrowing you, but
No
I
problem.
think the work you do at SUSS is really amazing. So I also just wanted to highlight that.
With the support from Gnowbe.
No, that's fantastic. All right, cool. So we're going to go to the last principle, the 4 C's. So the first C was context, curiosity, challenge, and then the fourth principle is consequence. So consequence, of course, is where this idea of either a positive or a negative consequence. And so as you think about that, maybe I'm going to challenge you to think of something maybe that you have not tried. And what is something that you might like to try as you think about consequence, positive or negative, and that you might want to apply in the current training, speaking, engagement that you're thinking about. And it could be positive or negative, because actually negative consequences often work. Fear-based is a very big motivator. Yep. So I'll ask for 2 volunteers to share. And while you're doing that, I'll share in terms of some consequences. Obviously, the day off was a consequence of, that was a reward that was associated with curiosity. So it was a combination one. I think other consequences we have is we'll have, for example, sometimes negative consequences would be that we'll go through the data, and if people have not engaged, especially from a team perspective, then they'll have to do a one-on-one with their manager if they have not engaged. Yeah, because we just want to, because we care, we want to know what's happening, what's wrong if you're not engaging. And so if you're not learning something, is there something, right? So that's a consequence of how you participate, so that's kind of one thing that we do on a more negative consequence, right? Other consequences, obviously would be, rewards or celebration. So if you do something and you learn something, then we'll celebrate that. And so as we kind of think about practical application, we're going to give you now a scenario, because this is about challenge. And we're going to give you 2 scenarios. And we want you to pick the scenario and a challenge and think about 3 scenarios and how you would, what elements of gamification do you think would help? So this is going to be, so now we're leveling up the engagement level and the participation of this game, where you're all participants of this game called the Masterclass, right? It's not really a game, but we're gamifying the Masterclass because we want you to participate, we want you to engage, and we also want there to be application. So we have 3 different scenarios here in Action 12. You have compliance training. I'm so sorry, I'm having trouble with my app. Obviously, my web keeps coming out. Luckily, you have it all on your phones as well. So scenario 1 is compliance, where you have very low completion and engagement rates. content is really dry, it's quite boring, it's dense text, it's boring videos, and the poor retention and minimal interaction. Challenge, how can you use gamification to improve that experience? The second scenario is a customer service. So it's heavily lecture-based right now, primarily in person, people talking at them, very little interaction, practical application. People attend, but there's disengagement and there's a poor application of customer service skills. So how would you use gamification techniques and methods in order to do that? Thank you so much. Is that Jet? Oh, you're awesome, Jet. Thank you. I think I have like 20 tabs open. I should probably close them. Okay, thank you. The third scenario is health and safety training, that the training in your manufacturing plant is text heavy, it's delivered through lengthy e-learning SCORM files. Workers find it tedious, they have to go to their desktops, there's no completion, and admins spend half their time chasing people to finish it up because they can't get it done on time. What gamification strategies would you apply to advise some of these people in this scenario? So pick a scenario, and then let's think of what techniques would you basically follow. So I'll give everyone a minute. And by the way, these are things that you can take more time after this masterclass because you may not have enough time to think about it. But there might be some immediate things that you think of. And then the immediate things you think of, then we can have a brief discussion about that. All right, I have one here. Okay, let's see. Oh, you guys are doing awesome with the context and sharing the principles later. Okay. Which scenario? Nick, would you mind sharing why you chose this scenario and what you would do?
Yeah, well, mine's just a quick one. I think if in the context or what was shown was that customer service kind of lecture heavy or text heavy in terms of the training. So one way to break it up is you have what I call short video scenarios or service incidences, which and then get the people to give feedback on how they will address those. You can even throw in role plays if you want to, so it becomes a little bit more interactive and not so reading based. Yeah.
Absolutely, I love it. And I love that because it's scenario. So what you're doing is you're also taking the elements of with feedback is you're actually also you're giving them an opportunity to participate with you as well, right? And to show the application of learning. Absolutely. That's a fantastic example. And I think that when we start to apply, that's going to be my challenge to all of you. One of the 4 C's is challenge, is for all of you to take some time as you kind of leave this masterclass and think, how would you do it? And what are some of the specific examples, even in your own work context, where you are seeing some of these challenges? And I would strongly recommend you go to the group board and steal each other's ideas. Because actually, one of the best ways of learning is to copy each other's techniques, whether it's cards, whether it's scenarios and videos and all these things, so that we can learn from each other and constantly grow as a community. So I'm just gonna, as we wrap up our masterclass, it was a very, very quick taster. Obviously, you're not going to become gamification masters in an hour, but I think some of you have already been practicing a lot of those. So in action 13 in session 2, we are just a quick shout out is we're going to be having, if you want to learn more, we're going to be having our 3rd edition of the Gnowbe Create conference. This is, I think, our most popular event. And it's for creators by creators. So you will not be hearing me speak. You'll be hearing a lot of your practitioners in their work context. I know we've had Santi speak in the past for Rajatan. So we've had different speakers, SUSS has spoken before, where they're sharing their challenges and how they were able to drive engagement and outcomes and what they did. How did they get buy-in from leaders, right? There are many different topics. So this year, we're going to focus on kind of some of these topics on internal mobility, how do you create a cohesive culture, micro-learning trends, and of course, AI is a very big topic. We're really delighted to have our CTO, head of product, Gregor, who will be speaking on AI as well. And as we wrap up session 3, we always love to get feedback. Feedback is a gift. And And, you know, so we just ask everyone to just think about maybe in terms of session 3, you know, what are some of your key takeaways from today? And most importantly, what's one thing you plan to implement in the next week? Because as you all know, in learning, if we don't apply something, we will forget, we'll go back to the busyness, and then a lot of stuff we just discussed will be gone. So this is the gift to you. Take 30 seconds to give this gift to yourself. And you may or may not have to share. Then, of course, as soon as you hit that arrow button after you answer the question, you will get a pop-up rating. Now, this is also embedded in survey tools, so you don't have to do a separate Survey Monkey, right? So we will embed the ratings, and you can please rate how effective you thought this masterclass was after you answer the question. Yeah, if you X out, you won't get it. So you should answer the question, and then once you answer the question, you click that, and then you'll get that. And then as we wrap up, if there's any other questions, I know that we didn't capture all of your questions. And if you wanted to learn more about, you know, content creation, gamification, application, how we think about it, if you want us to speak in your company or even have the same conversation with your colleagues through an event where we love doing speaking and sharing with folks. So you're able to do that. This is real-time editing. Thanks, Chit. So, and then if you want to book a meeting with us, you're welcome to do so. And just let us know how you want us to support you. We run these masterclasses based on feedback that we get from participants and from the community. And all of you are part of this community. And, you know, we think of Gnowbe as a movement. It's really a movement of practitioners who really want to take learning and training to the next level, you know, and people who care about outcomes, not just about checking the box. So we thank you so much for joining us this hour, and we look forward to staying connected. Thanks, everyone. And of course, for those of you who want your certificate, please go ahead and click on the next one and get your certificate. And you can, of course, share that certificate on your LinkedIn profile. And then the last action coming soon, it's empty now, will be a recording, a link to this masterclass. So you can also share it with other people as well. So thank you all so very much. Have a wonderful, wonderful day. Thanks, Lawrence. Thanks, Sarah.
Thank you.
Thanks, everyone.
Thank you, Soya.
Thank you, guys. Thank you. Good to see everyone.
Oh, yeah. Learned a lot.
Thank you.